Picture this. The executioner's flames lick at Catherine Deshayes' feet as she stands bound to the stake in 1680. Known to all Paris as La Voisin, the most feared fortune-teller in France, she screams out names that make the crowd gasp. Noble ladies, court officials, even whispers of the king's own mistress. Her final words before the fire consumes her will shake the very foundations of the most powerful monarchy in Europe. This is the story of the Affair of the Poisons, a scandal so dark and twisted that it nearly brought down the Sun King himself. Welcome to the court of Louis XIV, where beneath the glittering facade of Versailles lurked a shadow world of murder, black magic, and deadly ambition. What began as isolated deaths among the nobility would explode into the greatest criminal conspiracy in French history, revealing that the most dangerous predators weren't prowling the streets of Paris, but walking the marble halls of power. Our story begins in the 1670s, when sudden deaths among the French aristocracy started raising eyebrows. Husbands were dropping dead at dinner tables. Wives were mysteriously succumbing to unknown illnesses. Children of noble families were found lifeless in their beds. At first, these seemed like tragic coincidences, but a pattern was emerging that would horrify even the most cynical observers of court intrigue. Enter Gabriel Nicolas de la Reynie, Paris's first Lieutenant General of Police, a man whose methodical mind would prove crucial in unraveling this web of corruption. La Reynie had already transformed Paris policing, creating the world's first modern police force. But nothing had prepared him for what he was about to uncover in the shadow economy thriving just beneath the surface of aristocratic society. The investigation truly began when a seemingly minor arrest changed everything. In 1677, police detained Marie Bosse, a fortune-teller operating in the grimy back alleys of Paris. Under interrogation, Bosse made a chilling confession that sent shockwaves through the investigation. She wasn't just reading palms and predicting futures. She was selling death itself, boasting that she and her associates had already poisoned enough people to fill an entire parish cemetery. This revelation opened the floodgates to a criminal underworld that defied imagination. Paris, it turned out, was crawling with fortune-tellers, alchemists and fake priests who offered services far more sinister than telling fortunes. They sold love potions that were actually deadly toxins, performed blasphemous rituals involving infant sacrifice, and provided poisons so sophisticated that victims would die weeks later, their deaths appearing completely natural. At the center of this nightmare network stood Catherine Deshayes, better known as La Voisin. Operating from her mansion in the Villeneuve-sur-Gravois district, La Voisin had built an empire of evil that catered to the darkest desires of French nobility. Her client list read like a who's who of aristocratic society, and her services ranged from relatively harmless fortune-telling to orchestrating murders that would eliminate inconvenient husbands, rivals, or obstacles to inheritance. La Voisin's operation was sophisticated beyond belief. She employed a network of accomplices including chemists who concocted untraceable poisons, corrupt priests who performed sacrilegious rituals, and even medical professionals who could make murders look like natural deaths. Her most shocking collaborator was Etienne Guibourg, a defrocked priest who conducted black masses in secret chapels, often using the naked bodies of aristocratic women as altars while invoking demons and Satan himself. But the scandal truly exploded when investigators discovered connections reaching into the highest levels of court society. The name that sent tremors through Versailles was Françoise Athénée de Rochechouart, better known as Madame de Montespan, the king's official mistress and mother of several of his children. Evidence suggested that Montespan had consulted La Voisin multiple times, seeking magical assistance to maintain the king's affections and eliminate rivals. The implications were staggering. If the king's own mistress was involved in this web of poison and black magic, how deep did the corruption go? Investigators uncovered evidence that Montespan had participated in blasphemous ceremonies where prayers were offered for the death of Queen Marie-Thérèse and the king's new favorite, Mademoiselle de Fontanges. Some testimonies even suggested that infant hearts had been used in rituals performed over Montespan's naked body. As the investigation expanded, paranoia gripped the entire kingdom. Nobles began food tasters, court ladies whispered about enemies who might poison their wine, and even Louis himself became increasingly suspicious of those around him. The social fabric of aristocratic society was tearing apart as accusations flew and trust evaporated like morning mist. The legal proceedings that followed were unprecedented in scope and secrecy. Louis established a special tribunal called the Chambre Ardente, or Burning Chamber, to handle the cases away from public scrutiny. Between 1679 and 1682, this secret court processed hundreds of cases, torturing suspects to extract confessions and handing down death sentences with ruthless efficiency. The trials revealed horrors that shocked even hardened investigators. Witnesses described ceremonies where infants were sacrificed on makeshift altars, their blood used in unholy rituals. They spoke of poisons so refined that a single drop could kill within days, leaving no trace of foul play. The testimonies painted a picture of aristocratic society where murder had become as common as changing clothes, where noble ladies casually discussed eliminating their husbands over afternoon tea. Voisin herself proved to be a master manipulator even while facing execution. She carefully controlled her testimony, revealing enough to seem cooperative while protecting her most powerful clients. Her execution in February 1680 was designed to silence her permanently, but the damage to the monarchy's reputation was already done. The affair's resolution came through royal intervention rather than justice. As evidence continued to implicate more courtiers, including potentially the king's own mistress, Louis made a calculated decision to end the investigations. In 1682, he dissolved the Chambre Ardente and ordered all remaining evidence destroyed. Those still imprisoned were either executed quickly or banished to remote fortresses where they would never speak again. Madame de Montespan's fate illustrates the affair's ultimate impact. Though never formally charged, she found herself gradually excluded from court life, her influence waning as the king distanced himself from potential scandal. She eventually retired to a convent, spending her final years in religious contemplation, perhaps seeking forgiveness for sins that history can only imagine. The affair of the poisons fundamentally changed French society and European monarchy. It demonstrated how corruption could penetrate even the most protected corridors of power, how desperation could drive people to unthinkable acts, and how quickly civilized society could descend into barbarism when moral constraints disappeared. This dark chapter reminds us that beneath every glittering court lurk shadows where ambition, jealousy, and desperation can create monsters. The Sun King's reign may have represented the pinnacle of royal power, but the affair of the poisons proved that even the mightiest throne sits atop foundations that can crumble when poison seeps into the very heart of power itself.